Stothard? Not here yet. Thompson?
Here.
Festerson?
Here.
Gray?
Here.
Mr. President. Stothard?
Here.
Stothard?
She's here. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? And would you remain standing for the invocation by Council Member Pete Festerson?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lord, as we approach this Labor Day weekend, thank you for the men and women who work to make our country strong and great. Help us to pause for a moment to spend time with our family and friends, and thank you for our many blessings. In your name we pray. Amen.
City Clerk certified publication in the Daily Record on August 27th, notice for a pre-council and regular City Council meeting August 31st, 2010. A current copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted in the white binder on the east wall of Legislative Chambers.
If you have a cell phone or pager, we ask that you turn it off or to vibrate. And Mr. Clerk and council members and members of our audience, and I believe we have some special guests with us this afternoon. And they are from the International Visitors Leadership Program. Mr. Clerk, if you would proceed.
Okay, we have somebody from the State Department who will come up here and read their names, and you can give us a little, would you give us your name and what you're here for?
My name is Alan Raleigh with the Department of State in Washington, D.C. We invite about 5,000 visitors a year from all over the world, and these special guests here are from 5 different countries, and they're looking at labor issues. The first visitor from Trinidad and Tobago.
Here, no, give it to here, we'll do this. What's her name? Or his name? Here.
Want us to come up to your name?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's fine. That'll work.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shanmati Singh Ningsang from Trinidad and Tobago. I work with the Ministry of Labor and Small and Micro Enterprise Development in my country in the capacity of Director Research and Planning. And we're here to observe the entire labor movement, and both from the employers, the government, and the labor side in the U.S. And we're learning a lot. And we're contemplating staying here.
Okay.
We're happy to have you.
Next international visitor from Laos.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very happy to be here. I'm from Laos. I work for Lao trade unions. Thank you.
Next international visitor from Nigeria.
Good afternoon, everyone. I feel most excited to be here. I'm Rekia Bosede Hastrop from Nigeria. I work with the National Industrial Court in charge of adjudication of labor disputes. I'm the Chief Registrar of the court. Thank you.
Next international visitor from Mauritius, a small island country in the Indian Ocean.
Hi everybody, and good afternoon. I am Faisal Ali Bigan from Mauritius. Actually, I work as president, trade unionist president of Textile Manufacturing and Allied Workers Union for Mauritian workers and migrant workers also. Thank you very much.
Our last visitor is from Romania.
Hello, everybody. My name is Petru Blanariu. I come from Romania. I work for the National Agency for Employment in Romania. This is the public employment service where we deal mostly with the unemployment insurance programs and different active labor market programs for the unemployed.
Let's give our guests a nice, warm Omaha welcome. Mr. Clerk, first item.
Zoning ordinance on final reading, planning board attachments, items 5 through 9 are one case. 5 is ordinance to rescind a PK parking overlay district located northeast of 49th and Dodge Street. Planning board and planning department recommend approval. 6 is ordinance to rezone property located northeast 49th and Dodge from R7 LO and CC to CC Community or GC to CC Community Commercial District. A, Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. B is communications opposing. 7 is resolution of preliminary plat entitled Dundee Place replat. Number 19 is hereby accepted. A, Planning Board and Planning Department recommend. 8 is the replat transmitted here within Dundee Place replat number 19 is hereby approved. A, Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. And 19 is subdivision agreement between the city and Nebraska CVS Pharmacy is hereby approved.
Public hearing on items 5 through 9 begin now. Are there any proponents?
Yes, Mr. President, members of the council, Larry Jobin, 11440 West Center Road, appearing on behalf of the applicant Orange Development. Orange Development is the preferred Nebraska developer for CVS Pharmacy. With me today is Treg Charlton of CVS. He's the regional director of real estate, as well as David Barnett of Carlson Consulting, the consulting engineers on this project, if you have any questions. I think it's really important to look at what's before you today and the various approvals that we're seeking. We're seeking, of course, the first, the repeal of the parking overlay district. Second, the rezoning. Third, the preliminary plat. Fourth, the final plat. And fifth, the subdivision agreement approval for those items. So that's really all that's before this council today. I've got a number of exhibits I want to share with the council. Maybe the overhead light would work. This first slide shows the existing conditions of where the proposed CVS pharmacy will be located. You've got 49th Street here, Capitol Avenue here, and then the site goes to about mid-block between 49th and 48th, and of course it's along Dodge Street. The boundaries of the proposed site are outlined in red, and that's looking north off of Dodge. The next slide shows the existing conditions looking to the south. You got Capitol Avenue, North 49th Street, Dodge Street, and then, of course, the mid-block. And as you can see from the existing conditions, you know, it's not a real nice area. There's exposed dumpsters. The buildings are dilapidated. There's not a lot of green space. The parking area actually on the pavement actually goes and abuts the curb of Capitol Avenue. We think, and hopefully you'll see when we get through the rest of the slides in the presentation, that this will be a noticeable improvement to this particular corner. The next slide I want to show you is the site plan. I just really want to go around the site and explain what we have going on here. The CVS Pharmacy, the building itself, is 13,225 square feet. There's an access point off of Capitol Avenue in this location. There's 2 access points off 49th Street here. Then there's 1 access point off Dodge Street. And then there's a shared access at this location for any future development of this particular site to the east. We believe the proposed development meets or exceeds all of the city ordinances and the urban design guidelines with respect to building materials, landscape buffer yards, stormwater drainage, ground level transparency, which is the glass requirements, the build-to setback lines. As you've noticed, the building has been pulled to the corner of 49th and Dodge. We meet the 7% interior landscape requirements within the parking areas. We meet the street tree requirements. And then we've also added diagonal parking along 49th Street in this location. And then you'll see a slide later. This is an older site plan because the site plan was revised recently between Planning Board and Council to reflect the parallel parking along Dodge Street. So when we get to another slide, I'll point that out to you. But this is primarily to show you really what's going on all 4 corners of the site. With respect to 49th Street, we have a 20-foot landscape buffer along 49th. You've got the 6 on-street parking stalls at this location. There's a 10-foot sidewalk that connects Capitol to Dodge. And then there's a 14-foot sidewalk actually next to the building. You'll see that a little clearer. So as the sidewalk gets closer to the building, it widens in width. We have a drive-through canopy on the northwest corner of the building. And then, of course, we have the street trees that are required by the Urban Design Code. On the Capitol Avenue side, there's a 20-foot buffer requirement. And you'll see this a little clearer when we get to some other slides. There's actually an additional 16-foot landscaping buffer on the west side of the access point. So the real buffer yard at that location is 36 feet. So from here to here, you have a 36-foot landscape buffer. East of the access point onto Capitol Avenue, you have of course, the required 20-foot buffer, but then you have an additional 13-foot landscape buffer from the sidewalk to the back of curb of Capitol Avenue for a total of 33 feet on the landscape buffer on this side. There's also, on the west of the access, there's about a 3-foot berm, so it's actually a raised berm that will also help protect or buffer the adjacent residential uses from this proposed site with the landscaping. And then we've got about a 4 to 5 foot grade change east of the access point on Capitol Avenue. That's a 3-to-1 slope and a grade change going down, so the parking lot actually sits below. On the Dodge Street side, the building setback is approximately 53 feet from the center line of Dodge Street. Again, you'll see another slide here that'll show the parallel parking a little clearer. From the back of curb, there's a 12-foot sidewalk on the west side of the property along Dodge Street, and the sidewalk then divides. This is a pretty difficult slope, and I think what the engineers and the architects have done on this case is pretty amazing, actually, because you have about an 18-foot drop from the northwest corner of the site to the southeast corner of the site, and so you've got 7 foot of sidewalk running down the hill along Dodge Street and 5 feet staying up above the retaining wall next to the building. And so you'll see some slides a little later that shows those elevations, and we think it looks really nice in relationship to the Dodge Street corridor. There is a retaining wall. It meets all the Omaha by Design guidelines and the height restrictions. There's one little part that, because of the parallel parking, that will have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals, but it shouldn't be much of an issue, and the Planning Department is in favor of that. There's, as you can see from the site, there's plenty of landscaping. Will meet or exceed all the landscaping requirements of the city of Omaha. Then I want to get into the actual building elevations. I want to kind of let you know where we started and where we are today. This was the original building elevation, and as you can see, it was pretty plain vanilla. It was kind of their standard prototype. There was no articulation of the roof lines. I'm not sure that the ground level transparency or the glass requirements were met, and I think the building materials probably met the urban design element. But in any event, we met with the neighbors, we met with the planning department. This has been a project we've been working on for over a year now with respect to the elevations, and there's actually been 19 revisions from start to finish on this particular project. The first elevation was April 19th of 2010, and the last elevation was August 4th of 2010. There have been 4 meetings, actual in-person meetings with the neighbors and or the associations, one of which I attended. There was probably 60 or more people involved in that particular meeting. There have been 20 to 25 calls with the former president of the Dundee Homeowners Association, and CVS has actually spent $264,000 to date in soft costs. That's architects, engineers, and legal expenses just getting to this point now as far as trying to come up with a plan that works at this particular location. The actual building elevations that went to the planning board, and this was again after a number of discussions with the neighborhood and the neighborhood associations and Mr. Welk and the planning department as well. This particular elevation that went to the planning board met all the Omaha by Design standards with respect to the building materials. Again, you'll notice a better articulation of the roof lines. There was more architectural enhancements to the brick, and then we met the ground level transparency requirements also with the glass. We then went back after the planning board meeting because there was concerns that maybe the elevations didn't meet or didn't fit in as well on the Capitol Avenue side with the residential character of the Capitol Avenue side or the Dundee area. So the developer went back with CVS and their architect, and what we did is we came up with these current elevations, and these are the August 4th, 2010 elevations. And what you can see here is, and again, these meet all the urban design elements as codified by the Omaha Municipal Code. what we did is, and I've got some other exhibits that'll show that are bird's eye views that'll show a little better. What we did is, one of the concerns of the neighborhood, they wanted to see a pitch canopy over the drive-through. That was done, as you can see there. They also wanted, again, as we discussed, this more residential feel on the Capitol Avenue side. And so what you can see there is the roof being more pitched on the Capitol Avenue side to have more of a residential character. And what I think is really nice about this particular elevation is that we also were able to meet kind of the more commercial corridor look along Dodge Street, which is a major commercial corridor, obviously, at this location. And so you can see that with this particular elevation here. I've got some bird's eye view slides. First one that this is looking bird's eye view from the southeast, and here you can see what I was talking about as far as the sidewalk being split. You've got the 5-foot sidewalk coming up along the retaining wall, and the 7-foot sidewalk coming down along Dodge Street. Again, the fall occurring at that location. You've got here's where you can see the parallel parking being added, and of course this was a request of Public Works, and the developer and CVS was happy to accommodate them there. You've got a good view of the interior landscaping and the parking areas, and then of course you've got the main entrance to the store at this location next to the parking area. And there was talk about at one time, why can't you move the entrance to the 49th and Dodge Street corner? Well, it's simple. This is a pharmacy. We needed to have a readily accessible front door, because who are your customers? They're maternity patients, they're the elderly, they're the handicapped. So we had to have an access point that worked and fit in well with the parking area. This also shows, of course, the access onto Dodge Street. The next slide is looking to the northeast. Hopefully you can see it. They look a little dark for some reason, but this shows the 33-foot buffer at this location we talked about with the landscaping. And of course, this is all along Capitol, of course. And then you've got the 36-foot buffer area here. And then along the buffer area to the residential side, I believe, is actually greater than that. I think I missed that, though. Yeah, actually, this is a 35-foot buffer along the adjacent residential neighborhood here. So it's 35 feet, 36 feet, and 33 feet, and it's all landscaped, of course. The next slide is looking north at the northwest corner of the building. Again, you can see the pitch canopy of the drive-through, and then you can see the residential enhancements to the back of the building to fit in with the Dundee neighborhood. The next slide that we have is looking at the southwest corner of the building. This is along 49th and Dodge, shows the 6 diagonal parking spaces here, shows the street trees, and then again it shows that elevation grade change with the retaining wall going into the front of the store, and then of course the parallel parking along Dodge Street. The last slide here is looking again from the east, and it just shows the front of the building and the parking area, and then the shared access point here to the east. CVS wants to be a good neighbor. We believe this is evidenced by the design of the site, as well as the material choices and the construction of the building, and their willingness to work with the association and the various neighbors and the concerned citizens out there, as well as the planning department and the Public Works department with respect to the public improvements with the diagonal parking and the parallel parking along Dodge Street. And I know there's a lot of there's some opposition here, and I want to reserve some time to make a rebuttal statement. But one thing I was thinking about this morning is I was thinking, does Omaha want to be a maybe city? And when I talk about a maybe city to people, it's when I refer to a retailer or a developer that's coming into our marketplace, maybe for the first time, maybe for a second or third location, and they ask me the question, if I meet all the master plan requirements, if I meet all the Omaha by Design municipal code requirements, urban design element, if I have a favorable recommendation from the planning department, if I have a favorable recommendation from the planning board, will my project be approved? And I never want to be in Omaha and say maybe. I mean, that's never been the case here. When you meet those requirements, you know, the whole idea behind Omaha by Design and the codification of that and going through the TAG committee and everything else that we've done and having this council, former council, approve the Omaha Municipal Code and those urban design guidelines was to provide certainty to developers and retailers coming into our marketplace. And so long as they met these minimum guidelines and requirements, it was pretty certain that they would get approval. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know you probably will have some, and I just want to reserve some time to answer any questions that are raised by the opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents?
Ladies and gentlemen of the City Council, my name is Nels Anders Eriksson. I believe CVS got one thing very, very right. There is a lot of opposition to this. I've lived within 2 blocks of 49th and Dodge my whole life. I'm here to represent the Lincoln Highway. This is the biggest national historic landmark in America. Since its inception in 1913 until it became Highway 30 in 1929, Omaha was the epicenter. This sign, this sign is how cities all across the country are celebrating their history. They're preserving their landmarks. They're designating all over the United States. Boys Town actually moved from a different location just to be on the Lincoln Highway. Piggly Wiggly revolutionized the grocery business in 1917 with self-service. Louis Summers built the first self-serve grocery store in 1917, the same year. And if you look at the 49er, Mojo's, that third building down is Louis Summers' self-service grocery store. He built it on a hill west of Omaha on the Lincoln Highway. Eisenhower rode his motorcycle in a military convoy in 1918, and the Lincoln Highway inspired him to develop the Interstate 80 many years later. From coast to coast, the Lincoln Highway was the first road, went from New York to San Francisco. Interstate 80 is the only highway that goes coast to coast, basically mimicking the Lincoln Highway. Sorry about the The intersection of 49th and Dodge is the most historic intersection in Omaha on the Lincoln Highway. It actually has all 4 corners intact from when it was the center of commerce. It was high on a hill west of Omaha. It had 2 grocery stores, 2 pharmacies, a bakery, a hotel, a tea room, dry cleaners, doctors, dentists, and a gas station. With the streetcar going north on 49th, it was also the grand entrance to Dundee. It wasn't 50th Street, it was 49th Street. I believe all of you have received letters from the Lincoln Highway, from the National. It's urging you not to destroy these 3 historic buildings attached to a National Historic Landmark: Mojo's, Cappy's 49er, and Louis Summers. The National Park Service position is that any building attached to a National Historic Landmark should be considered historic also. The northwest corner is the old Dundee Hotel, and it's going to be completely restored back to its 1920s grandeur. The most famous restaurant in Omaha was the Hilltop House. It's still there, it's still intact. The gas station is still there intact. All 4 corners are still historically intact. If you destroy the 3 historic buildings, which have proudly served Omaha since 1917, that corner will look just as atrocious as Abe's does in Underwood at 50th and Underwood. It's a interstate highway gas station in the middle of Dundee, and no one likes its bright lights. It's just ugly. A simple solution would be to utilize the Target building. The last time I talked to CVS, they hadn't even considered Target and didn't even know it was empty. I've talked to the Joslin Neighborhood Association. They would support a CVS on the Target location. Dundee Memorial would support a location. A simple solution to revitalize 49th and Dodge would be to put a smaller CVS in Louis Summers' historic building and tear down 4820, which was actually built in Louis Summers' parking lot. Rezoning one side, okay, you're looking at rezoning one side of 2/3 of a residential block in Dundee, historic Dundee. It makes absolutely no sense. And it sets a very, very dangerous precedent to rezone parts of stuff. They were talking about putting up a little awning, making a building look residential. This building is twice as big as Rainier's, which is huge. And a little awning and some spindly little trees are not going to make it look residential. A local radio personality has called the 49er a shitbox, but this is the same tired excuse that they used when they tried to destroy the old market. The old market was called a shitbox. Can you imagine if the city councils before you hadn't had the courage to respect Omaha's glorious historic past? Now the old market is Nebraska's largest attraction, and it was once called a shitbox. The Lincoln Highway is 100 years old in 2013. The national conference is being held in Nebraska because we are the epicenter of the most historic road in the United States. And Omaha has the largest attraction. When it was built, the Lincoln Highway had 18 miles of brick roadway in Nebraska. And if you drive from the river to Elkhorn, it's about 18 miles. And that was all Omaha. So let's make sure there's still something for people to see in 2013 when they come to Omaha. And just please don't postpone this, just vote no. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents?
Hello, my name is Jenny Allgood, and I'm a resident of Dundee. I actually grew up in the Dundee area, and now I'm a proud owner of one of its homes. One thing that was not mentioned in the laundry list that the lawyer listed was having the support of the people that it wants to serve. I turned into the public record over 1,300 signatures of Dundee residents and residents from other parts of the city that are opposed to the rezoning and opposed to destroying our neighborhood. And I have an additional 422 signatures that I've gathered in the last 2 weeks that I would like to add to the public record as well. So in total, I have between 1,700 and 1,800 signatures from Dundee residents and residents throughout the city that are opposed to this rezoning and opposed to the suburban-style box store that is being proposed in this project. I'm going to ask today, how many people in this room do not want this project and this rezoning to go forward? I think that's a pretty good show of hands. To start out with, for those of you that are unfamiliar with the area, I just want you to see the scale of this project. It's similar to the aerial view that was shown a little bit earlier, but that aerial view was zoomed in, so it didn't really give into a context as to how big of a site we're talking about. The yellow areas are the surrounding streets, and then the pink represents what would be CVS and its enormous parking lot. So we're talking over half of a city block when one of these small squares is what's considered, or what is a residential house and its property right now. So we're talking about an enormous scale project, one that does not fit in this area. There is nothing else in this area that is of this scale. And I take issue with saying that this is a dilapidated area. Right here I have, I don't know, does this zoom out? Thank you. Right here I have the 5 houses in question that are planned to be torn down. They're not in bad shape. They are occupied houses up until this came up. 3 of them have brand new siding. 3 of them have new porches. They're well maintained and well taken care of. They are not in ruins, as you were led to believe. And then I do acknowledge that on the Dodge Street side, those properties do need a facelift. But as Nils said, that's what happened to the old market. We just give these a facelift as what, somebody wants to do at the piano store, and we're left with this great historic corner revitalized. So to give you some further perspective, right here is what Capitol Avenue looks like today. This is kind of dark up there, but you can see the houses and the lawns and the trees and the 100-foot oak trees. And this, by contrast, is what CVS has planned it to look like. Now, the plan view that was shown to you earlier was pretty misleading. It made it look like it had Fontenelle Forest around it, when in reality, we've got 3-foot juniper trees, and then also it doesn't take into consideration that much of the property, this is sloping both ways, both in the south direction and the east direction. So actually the residents that will remain on Capitol Ave sit higher than this parking lot, as do the subsequent streets behind it. So he spoke of these, 3 to 5 foot berms. That doesn't do you any good when your property sits 5 feet above this site as it is. So again, this is what Capitol looks like today. This is what they plan to turn it into. Again, this design is no different, or there's nothing like this in the area today. Now, this is, by all means, a suburban style design that's trying to be fit into an urban setting. Dundee does not have box stores with oversized parking lots, and we should not be bringing suburban sprawl into an urban area. Now, Omaha's urban planning guide acknowledges the problem of using the wrong design model. So on page 4, I will quote, "The older parts of the city with more traditional patterns of development have occasionally become eroded by suburban-style development that conflicts with the traditional content." And that's out of Omaha's design guide. People are of the perception that this is progress, when reality is it'll assist in the erosion of one of the most cherished neighborhoods in our city. I have many objections to these, and I detailed all that in a letter to the council and also submitted it to public record, and today I will go over as much as I am allowed to explain. First and foremost, as I've already stated, I am vehemently opposed to the rezoning, as are the 1,800 people that signed our petition and all of the people here today. The plans would lead to the destruction of the 5 houses I showed, and once these houses are gone, they're gone forever. They don't build houses like these anymore. They're gone forever once they're torn down. The plans, you can go down and checklist and say, I meet this, I meet this, I meet this, and see if it fits in the right color-coded area. But the plans need to reflect the spirit of our design guidelines and the desire of the neighborhood. Dundee is a recognized historic district, and that should be celebrated as such. Tearing down these houses is destroying the very thing that this neighborhood is known for. This will forever turn Capitol Avenue into a commercial area, which is not in the city's master plan. On the future land use plan, it's shown as residential. CVS plans look nothing like what you see in your own urban design guide as appropriate projects in an urban area. And they do not reflect any of the appropriate designs shown in the guide. Throughout the guide, line after line is about preserving the integrity of the neighborhood. And in the guidelines, again I quote, "Preserve and protect unique natural and historic features which serve as a foundation for Omaha's overall image." Again, This is destroying, not preserving. Granted, there might be areas that need improvement on existing parking lot or the facades, but that can be fixed. You don't have to tear down to fix that. The rezoning also goes against the trend of the neighborhood. On my block alone, which is one block north of the site, we have had several properties redesigned or refurbished in the last several years. In the last 10 years alone, we've had 2 houses saved from condemnation. One is the historic Selby House, which is denoted as the first house in Dundee. And then in 2005, at the request of the Dundee Memorial Park Association, 27 houses in the immediate vicinity of the proposed site were changed at the request of the Dundee Memorial Park Association to be changed from multifamily to single. So clearly the desire in this neighborhood is towards residential. CVS's plan could reverse these trends and to the detriment of the neighborhood. A key point that I want to make here is that there are options. I understand the need for development, and I don't object to CVS wanting to come into Midtown, but it is irresponsible for us to tear down occupied businesses, occupied homes, when there are so many vacant properties in the area. There's so many other options out here. The design alone could be modified to fit within the existing commercial property. So that leads me to the design. The developer would lead you to believe that we've got a custom design here. Right here, I'm showing you, and I apologize for it being dark. We have here's the store that was recently built on 144th and Maple. Here's the store that was built on 108th and Ford. Essentially, they are the same design. A 20-foot section of a sloped roof does not make it a custom design. Using red brick instead of brown brick does not make it a custom design. CVS is capable of a lot more. Here's an example of one that they did where it looks like they reused an existing historic building, and this was, I believe, either in Atlanta or Arlington, Virginia. And so this is a great example of what they're capable of. We've got buildings there that could be refurbished. So what is stopping them from doing that here and helping our neighborhood instead of hurting it? Obviously, their design is about what is easiest and what would be the cheapest. So their design says, we don't care about the neighborhood. We're here to make money and put others out of business. Now, I know that they've met with the Dundee Memorial Park Association in May, but even people that I met with that went to that meeting did not come away realizing that they were tearing down properties. And what they requested to be done to the design drawing certainly has not been done. Again, this is not in the right, what is planned is not in the right form. And again, to quote the design guideline, page 7, buildings in an urban area should provide a mixture of use. And another part of it says that suburban areas are where you have single-use projects, not urban areas. The parking lot is another major point of contention with the neighbors. It is excessive. It is 35 to 40% bigger than what is required by Omaha's municipal code. They've designed upwards of 70 to 73 parking stalls, and the city code only requires 52. So right-sizing the parking lot alone could prevent them from tearing down these houses and needing the rezoning. And then also there's the issue of leveling an entire, or the majority of a city block also takes away that noise and sound barrier that we currently have with the existing homes and businesses. And they have done nothing to mitigate that. Their 3-foot bushes are not going to do anything when the adjoining streets sit 5 feet above them. So again, key options here or a key point here is that they have other options. They can stay in the commercial area, existing commercial area, by reducing the parking lot. They can reuse an existing building. They've shown us that they can do that. They're just not willing to do it here and not willing to work with the neighbors in that respect. And then there's always they could use another site. We have so many vacant lots or shuttered buildings in the area. There's an increase in tax revenue for you. It's blank today. That's where we should be developing. Now, the last point that I'll go into in detail is the traffic and pedestrian safety. Anybody who has driven through Midtown knows what a nightmare it is on Dodge Street when somebody tries to turn left. And this site has horrible access because of that no left turn on Dodge. Now, actually, you can turn left into a business, and it's not well received when you do. This property also sits at the crest of a hill, which is up towards this area. So you've got the entrance down here, and you've got people sitting to turn left into CVS, and you've got somebody coming over that hill not expecting to see a parked car, because that car is waiting to turn across 3 lanes of oncoming traffic. So right there's an accident waiting to happen. And it'll be the city that will receive the litigation for those claims. Another one is the 49th Street side. That is a 2-lane road that feeds into the main part of the neighborhood. Existing today, we have line of sight issues, and we also have speeding problems on it today. We don't need to increase the traffic on that road, which will happen for 2 reasons. One, they're dumping their pharmacy window and their 65-foot trucks onto that road. And then secondly, because of the no left on turn, you're going to have people looping through the neighborhoods to get to the store. So we have no guarantee that their enormous delivery trucks will go back to Dodge, and we have no guarantee that they'll even use that size of trucks. Maybe they'll do something bigger. Now, I called the city planning board to ask them about these traffic concerns, because I think there's a real concern here of somebody getting hurt. And they told me that no traffic study was done, which I find that to be unbelievable when you have an intersection such as this. The other problem is the design for pedestrians. Again, you might be able to go down the checklist and say, hey, I put it on the edge and all that, but it still does not make it pedestrian friendly. Somebody approaching the store from the neighborhood is going to have to cross 4 lanes of traffic to walk across and walk all the way around the building to get into the store. That is not pedestrian friendly. Somebody coming up from, let's say, 46 or 48th Street, again, is going to have to go west and cross 3 to 4 lanes of traffic just to reach the front door of the store. That is not urban design. Urban design is about being pedestrian friendly, and having to walk across 4 lanes of traffic is not pedestrian friendly. I really hope, and it is the charge of the council, to put the safety of its citizens ahead of the desires and the excess of a large corporation. Now, I do have many other concerns that I will just meet briefly, because I know there's others that wish to speak. We've got the increased runoff with no mitigation.
Jenny?
Yes.
What you're reading from, you've submitted to the council, and it is on the record, and it's 7 pages long. If you wouldn't mind just capsulating.
That's what I just said. I'm going to just touch these last 4 points, and I will not go into detail.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
My other concerns are the increased runoff with no mitigation. Nils already touched on it being historically significant. There's the abandonment issue. What happens in a few years when they find a better site and go somewhere else? And then lastly, this is a very dangerous precedent. So I just got one more quote to read from the Omaha's design guide, and that is, it lists one of its major goals is to preserve and protect unique natural and historic features which serve as a foundation for Omaha's overall images. Dundee is certainly one of those images. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next opponent. Folks, all you're doing is, by clapping and all of that, all you're doing is prolonging the session. So, okay? You can thank her internally, all right? Thank you very much. Next opponent.
Hello, my name is Mark Welsh. I live at 5611 Howard Street, which is also in this neighborhood. And I sent you all an email message earlier today, which I'm just going to skip over part of it, because the woman who just spoke mentioned the danger that I see in that neighborhood. When I drive up and down Dodge Street at 29th Street, as she mentioned, it's at the top of a hill. So if you have a large parking lot like this of a business that wants to draw traffic from both directions of Dodge Street, people will stop on Dodge Street in the fast lane. People are going to jump over that hill. They're going to pop over that hill through a stoplight. A lot of them will run a yellow stoplight or a red stoplight, as many people do. As if any of you travel Dodge Street, you know people don't travel the speed limit. They travel 45 miles to 50 miles an hour on that section of Dodge Street, making it even more dangerous. Now, something she did not mention that I learned at one of the stop classes I went to, because I used to be a speeder. When people stop at a place where they're going to turn, either when they're going to turn left, a lot of people dangerously turn their wheel so that they're ready to go as soon as there's a little gap in that traffic. Now, if a car gets hit from the rear when their wheels are turned left, what's going to happen? They're going to get pushed, not straight ahead, they're going to get pushed into the oncoming traffic, causing a head-on or a near head-on collision, the most dangerous type of collision that you can have. So I urge you to not allow this to happen, to cancel it completely. And like the woman before me, I called the department in charge of doing traffic studies, and they told me as well, oh no, we have no plans to do any kind of a traffic study at this location. And I talked to them about this danger, and I could not convince them that a traffic study needed to be done. So I urge you to prevent many accidents, not just single car accidents or two car accidents, but when that car gets pushed with its wheels turned into oncoming traffic, now you've got three cars, and then cars from the other direction also going 50 miles an hour, some of them, or 45 at the least. You're going to have massive car wrecks at this location. Some of them may kill people, not just injure, but kill people. So I hope you vote against this today and just end it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have one other question. I've read in papers that CVS and Walgreens have a lot of empty stores because they compete, and where one wins, the other one just packs up their bags and leaves an empty store. You might want to ask this gentleman, if he comes up again, how many empty stores, how many CVS stores are empty in this country right now? Because that's what may happen here if you allow this in a couple more years if Walgreens wins in this city.
Thank you. Next opponent.
Hello, my name is Andy Hale, H-A-L-E. I reside at 1701 North 52nd Street. And I just want to echo the last two of my colleagues' remarks in regards to Dodge Street and the turning of left. Let me start by saying I welcome CVS. I welcome the competition to Walgreens. That's where I spend my money now. And I think anytime there's competition, it's obviously better for the consumer. And I do take kind of offense that regardless if this CVS goes through, I still think Omaha's a city on the go. And if the council votes this down, I don't really think that's going to hurt future businesses or anything like that. So I did kind of take offense to that. But let me just say this. I'm employed in downtown. I work there, drive back and forth every day. And anyone who's been on Dodge and comes through going eastbound in the mornings, number one, in the winter, there's a lot of visual problems you encounter because of the sun. There's just, Dodge Street's a mess. And anyone who's been on it knows this. And I just don't understand how you're going to be able to turn left. Anytime you turn left, and I know, I didn't know the law. I've been almost a lifelong citizen of Omaha, and naive, I hate to admit it. I didn't realize you could turn left into a business, because as you go down, up and down Dodge, you see the no left turn signs. I understand that now. But what I do not understand, and it is what the people have been saying, and Jenny did a very good job of it, how are you going to turn left off of Dodge into that business, especially in the mornings, without causing a problem? And that's why I look at this. Again, I welcome CVS into our neighborhoods. Is this the right spot for it? No. We have plenty of other areas up and down Saddle Creek that would welcome this. But when you put a business on Dodge like this, and the reason you guys are putting it on Dodge is because of location, and you're going to have a high traffic volume, how are you going to deal with the turning left problem? And so that's what I wanted to address you guys, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next opponent.
Hello, my name is Molly Romero, and I live at 5101 Nicholas Street. I've been in Dundee for over 30 years, and I'm a co-owner of Mark's Bistro, and we celebrate our 7th anniversary this week, so I've been a business owner in Dundee now for 7 years. I did attend the Dundee Memorial Park Association meeting where CVS made their presentation for their proposal. And it was not clear at that time that houses were going to be torn down. And I thought, well, it's ugly. We need to have it redesigned and make some design changes, and it'll be okay. And I actually spoke at the planning board meeting and said the same thing, although we felt like we were getting no cooperation from CVS. But after the planning board meeting, when I spoke as a proponent, and I listened to Jenny's description of what it would do to the neighborhood, I said, my God, design changes aren't going to fix this problem. It's a size problem. And I think there is no way that we can fix the problem in a way that makes it safe, consistent with the urban design manual, or consistent with the character of Dundee. So after the planning board meeting, I researched CVS and its development practices, and the question became, why are they picking 49th and Dodge? And I said, well, are they trying to serve an unserved population or an underserved population? Well, I counted 3 independent pharmacies, the Elmwood Pharmacy, Kohl's, and Kubat. This is all within a 10-minute drive. 6 non-pharmacy chains, 2 Hy-Vees, a Baker's, a No Frills Target, and a Walmart, with all have pharmacies in them. 6 Walgreens stores within 10-minute drive, 1 on Saddle Creek, 1 on 72nd and Cass, 1 at 90th and Dodge, 1 at 30th and Dodge, 1 at 50th and Center, and 1 in Benson. And then 3 med centers that have pharmacies, UNMC, Creighton, and Methodist, and actually I could toss in Children's too. Now, of those 18 pharmacies within a 10-minute drive of this location, 4 are within a 15-minute walk. So they're clearly not trying to serve an unserved population. So the only other alternative would be trying to take market share from the existing pharmacies. In essence, that's called a retail war. And I've read some articles about the war between Walgreens and CVS, and there are many communities that are beginning to resist being a battlefield for this war, because it does end up in abandoned stores. It ends up in a lot of destruction of historic property. And as an example, some of you may remember the fast food wars, where we had Roy Rogers, Hardee's, Jack in the Box, Kentucky Fried Chicken, and Popeyes stores all over the place. And you don't see them around anymore at all. And it was very difficult for those neighborhoods to absorb those empty buildings. Then there was the Walmart invasion, which was driving out all the Main Street stores in the smaller towns. And that turned the main streets into ghost streets. So this war of CVS versus Walgreens, they're trying to turn Dundee into this battleground. Now, I have some observations about the design and all of that, but my concern, what I'm going to address right now, because I don't think it's been adequately addressed, is if they build it, what happens? So what do the losers do in this war? Well, they close up shop. They board up their stores. And it looks like that's one of the intentions of this. But what do the winners do? Well, they can either hold on to the territory that they have won, or they can say, well, now that we've got our foothold, we can close that one and move to something a little bit better, which is what a lot of the Walmarts are doing. And we will see the urban planners have been talking about the gray ghosts and the blight of all the neighborhoods with these closed Walmarts and other big boxes. Some communities are even requiring that developers of big box stores now post a deconstruction bond, because the blight that an abandoned store has on a neighborhood is such a negative thing to the neighborhood. And of course, we can look at the Target store on Saddle Creek and see how that affects the neighborhood. The attorney for CVS said something about being a maybe city. Well, I think, if a plan conforms to the neighborhood and if the plan conforms to the urban design manual, it won't be a maybe. But if you try to bring a suburban big box into an historic neighborhood, it is a maybe. Now, that issue is being addressed all over the country, and CVS is addressing it all over the country. I have been in contact with a woman from Carbondale, Illinois. They had a successful battle against a suburban CVS-style building being dropped into their historic neighborhood. And just 2 weeks ago in Sayre, Pennsylvania, a CVS project failed because there was sufficient neighborhood opposition, and they were just going to move from one CVS to another CVS, leaving a big empty gray ghost behind them. In Highland Park, St. Paul, Minnesota, Highland Park is a historic neighborhood. There was a CVS store that closed after about 5 years operation, and the neighborhood was welcoming that store in, but the impact it had on the store was on the neighborhood was negative, and then the neighbors turned into opposition. So why is the gray ghost issue such a concern in this particular case? Well, I think it's been adequately described about the dangerous ingress and egress for vehicular traffic. It's been mentioned about the dangers to pedestrians. Along 49th Street, a pedestrian has to cross 4 lanes of access to the store in order to get just from from Capitol to Dodge. Community opposition, almost 1,800 signatures. That doesn't bode well for the success of a store that's going to rely on the community. So if there's a failure to perform, we end up with an abandoned, ugly gray ghost. And I think the weaknesses of this proposed site make a more attractive location a necessity. So, I guess all I would like to do, I think I will just cut this briefer in the interest of time. So I will close by urging you to listen to the arguments that Jenny Allgood presented and some of these other people in opposition. I would urge you to listen to the way this project would affect her immediate neighborhood, and I urge you to do your duty to protect the vitality and integrity of our neighborhoods. Listen to the voices of the 1,800 people who signed the petitions opposing the rezoning for the CVS project. Thank you.
Thank you. By a show of hands, how many wish to speak in opposition? If you folks could make your way down here to the front, there's some open seats. We can continue this going as quickly as possible. Thank you so much. Next, opponent.
Thank you very much. Dear members, my name is Eli Crittenden, and I currently reside at 4818 Capitol Avenue. I say currently reside because if the proposed rezoning were to be approved by the council today, I will begin looking for a new place to live. I enjoy my quiet residential neighborhood, and the proposed rezoning seeks to change that to a busy, traffic-jammed commercial development. I ask that the members consider today's proposal not merely as a 49th and Dodge development, but more so a 49th and Capitol development. I relocated to Omaha 1 year ago today and have very much fallen in love with my adopted city of Omaha. The main reason I've come to like Omaha so much is because of the neighborhood I live in, Dundee. It is a unique place where the homes and commercial buildings have a beautiful and historic aesthetic. The residential streets can be safely traversed by its residents, and the people have an overwhelming sense of community pride. The proposed building and parking lot do not conform to the character and aesthetic of Dundee's buildings. The increased vehicular traffic threatens the safety of the neighborhood's pedestrians, and CVS will not become involved with a part of the community. Rather, CVS seeks to compete with locally owned small businesses that do currently support the community through their sponsorship of neighborhood events, beautification programs, and the like. I've lived in cities and small towns throughout the Midwest, the Southeast, New England, and elsewhere. And as a new resident to Nebraska, to Omaha, and to Dundee, I can say with confidence that there is something very special and unique here. The rezoning, inevitable destruction, and degradation of my part of the neighborhood would forever change my opinion of Omaha and my future here. When I wake up in the morning and step out my front door to drink coffee and read the paper on my front porch, I enjoy my view across the street. It is a view of residential homes occupied by aspiring students, young professionals, families, and retirees. It is a view of green grass lawns, towering decades-old trees, and a picture of the last century. I can barely hear the cars on Dodge, muffled by the row of locally owned and operated businesses facing Dodge and the residential homes looking back at me. I very much enjoy where I live and do not want to see an imposing box structure occupying a quarter of the block, with a paved parking lot occupying another quarter, and providing a clear window to Dodge, letting in the sights and sounds of increased traffic. Such a view would make my coffee taste bitter, and the World Herald seem to have more bad news than good. Should the council not heed the wisdom of the 1,700 to 1,800 concerned citizens who signed the petition against the proposal, or the wisdom of the neighborhood small business leaders, or the myriad of people at this meeting opposing the proposal, then I will know that my opinion of Omaha, its leaders, and my choice of neighborhood will have to change. I strongly encourage the members to not approve the rezoning, and I applaud the members who vote against this unwise proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next opponent.
Hi, my name's Elijah. I've lived in Dundee since I moved to Nebraska in 2003, and I take great pride in my neighborhood, living there and stuff. And one of the things I like about it is that it is unique and special in a lot of ways. There's no reason to have a CVS there. Like, I can get everything that I could possibly get at a CVS. I live within a 5-minute block of that intersection right there. And there's nothing there at CVS that will improve my life at all. I can get everything I need at nearby locations anytime. And I don't know. I know lots of other residents of the neighborhood, and I don't know anyone who wants a CVS in the neighborhood. I mean, there's almost 1,800 signatures. Just don't do it, please. I'm begging. Thank you.
Thank you. Next opponent.
My name is Ann Dahlke. My boyfriend and I own a house in Bemis Park. We just recently bought a house in Bemis Park. We could have very easily slapped $120 down on a cookie cutter house out in West Omaha, but instead we decided to buy a house in Bemis Park that does need new floors, and it does need a new roof, and it does need new siding to get rid of the asbestos. But the truth is that it is a beautiful historic home, and there's something about that. There's something about driving down Dodge and seeing the 49er. And maybe it's a little bit of a wreck, and maybe we need to plant a couple trees. If that'll make the design aesthetics a little bit better, then so be it. We'll do it. But it's beautiful. And Dundee is beautiful, and there's just no reason to slap a building down that is going to end up being vacant in a few years. And I know that you guys are sick of hearing it, but it's the truth. The truth is that those houses have been there for almost 100 years, and they will be gone. And some building will go up, and in 10 years, it will be empty. There is a Target building that is sitting there waiting for something to happen to it. And I'm okay with CVS being there. That's fine. But there's absolutely no reason for them to tear down homes that have been there for 100 years, or buildings that have been there for almost 100 years, just so they can plop down for maybe 20, offer a few jobs, underpaying jobs, I'm sure, to a community that just doesn't need it. Come on in, fill out the Target building, fill up another building that maybe is vacant or needs a facelift, but don't plop down just so that you can reap the benefits. This is very similar to some young kid waiting for grandpa to keel over so that he can reap the benefits. That's exactly what it is. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Next opponent.
Hi, my name is Eric Williams. I live at 4806 Davenport. Forgive me, I've never spoken to the City Council before. I haven't actually been here since 5th grade, so I'm a little bit nervous. But I'd like to read from a letter that I'll leave with you. I'm here today to express my strong feelings against allowing a CVS big box store to be located at 49th and Dodge Street. After graduating from college in 2005, I returned to Omaha based on the amazing amount of potential the city has to offer young professionals. When looking for my first apartment, I drove immediately to Dundee. I drove to 50th and Dodge and turned north, and have lived for 5 years within 1 block of the first apartment I visited. I was primarily interested in Dundee for the strong local community, the high number of locally owned businesses. I walk several times a week to Blue Line for coffee, to the Bread Oven for lunch, and to the Dundee Community Garden. I enjoy the balance that comes from knowing so many members of my community, as well as the owners and employees of those locally owned businesses. A new CVS will not fit into our neighborhood and will send money out of our local economy. Since I live less than 2 blocks away from the proposed site, I'm extremely concerned about the noise and light pollution, as well as the traffic that would be brought directly to my doorstep. I have reviewed the proposed plans for the site, and the removal of several houses to make room for the excessive amount of parking required for this type of building is disgusting. With the locally owned Kohl's Pharmacy at 50th and Dodge and the existing Walgreens at Dodge and Saddle Creek, I see no need for an additional big box pharmacy in Dundee. I am strongly opposed to allowing CVS at 49th and Dodge and ask that you do not allow them to destroy a part of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Next opponent.
Hi, I'm Dina Woloka. I live at 801 North 49th Avenue. I am a resident of Dundee and a property owner there. And while I am not against development and I'm not against CVS, I am asking that my city council look at this project and not just for code compliance, but at whether is it appropriate on this site and in this manner. It has been stated that this project complies with the City of Omaha Comprehensive Plan and the minimum code standards in the urban design element. And while that might be true, I do not believe that this plan supports the city's goals outlined in the land use element or the true spirit intent of the ACI overlay. The City of Omaha land use element in the master plan states 2 of its goals as to 1, manage growth by preventing new strip office commercial development, and 2, create high-density mixed-use areas throughout the city. Rezoning is appropriate where it is consistent with the comprehensive plan or the surrounding land use. As is clear when looking at a map of the surrounding neighborhood, which is predominantly residential, this project is not consistent with the surrounding land use. As I understand it, it is only consistent with a comprehensive plan because that plan allows for mixed-use area to extend beyond the area designated as ACI to encompass the south side of Capitol Avenue. Another stated goal of the master plan is to reconfigure certain existing developed parts of the city into areas that function as true mixed-use centers, including those designated as the streetcar commercial areas built before the Second World War. The proposed site is clearly such an area. Again, the guidelines for these areas encourage a mix of uses, building infill compatible with the surrounding areas in density, scale, design, and use, and to prevent office and commercial projects from expanding into surrounding residential areas. I could be supportive of this project if this were a true mixed-use development, if this project preserves some aspect of the residential nature of the surrounding neighborhood. But as proposed, this development will eliminate existing residential altogether in favor of a purely commercial development. And in this case, the housing stock that we preserve may be rental and not the most valuable housing stock, but that doesn't mean it isn't a valuable housing option in this neighborhood, which has worked hard to revitalize this area of Dundee. The rental housing options in Dundee are key to its diversity and an integral part of the neighborhood's unique nature. Personally, I grew up in West Omaha. I went to school in Ralston, but I rented in Dundee as a student, and I fell in love with that neighborhood. And as of today, 10 years ago today, I closed on my house in Dundee and am now a resident of Dundee. These homes and these residential neighborhoods are an important part of what makes Dundee Dundee. And by allowing encroachment by a completely commercial development says that we give up on this part of the neighborhood and that the residential stock is of no value. I do not believe this project meets any of the goals espoused above. Just because a project may meet the letter of the law or the code, I believe that does not absolve us as a community or this council of making a determination that as currently designed, it is not appropriate. I ask you today to deny this application for rezoning. Deny it because preservation of the neighborhood is important. Deny it because you believe we should not encourage the upzoning of areas designated residential to commercial. Deny it because it is not the mixed type of project so clearly intended for this redevelopment. Deny it because it is not consistent with surrounding uses in density, scale, or design, and deny it for any other reason of the very valid reasons given here today. A denial does not say to CVS that we don't want you in our city. It says we respect our neighborhoods and we will ensure that they are redeveloped properly, and to that end we welcome a site plan that respects the goals and guidelines noted above or a plan for any other appropriate site. However, this plan is not proper here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next opponent.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Rob Anderson. I own the property at 4820 Capitol Avenue. and it's directly across from the driveway going to the CVS. And I'd like to ask you, how would you like a driveway to a pharmacy across from your home? It's a rental property, granted, but my tenants have already informed me that if this building goes up, we're gone. The lady next door to the west of me, she's already given her 30-day notice because she fears development of a pharmacy across the street from her. My point, I guess, is my property value is going to go down. The house next to me, the one next to him, all the way down the block, property values are going to decrease. Now, right now, I pay almost $4,000 a year in property taxes. So you're going to have a whole block and a half, and probably even on the west side of 49th Street where Rainier's is. Do you think people are going to live there and look at a pharmacy parking lot? No, I don't think so. Plus, if we throw in the TIF financing, okay, if we give some money away there, you're probably going to have a net loss between all the property taxes and the financing. What does the pharmacy bring to the neighborhood? And I'm just trying to give you a personal viewpoint. Who's going to replace my property value? I put my blood, sweat, and tears in there for 25 years, and it's pretty much my retirement plan. And we've all heard how it affects everybody else, so I'm giving you a personal view how it's going to directly affect a person. And right now, I just would like to ask you to not approve the plan of a pharmacy at 49th and Dodge. Thank you.
Thank you. Next opponent.
People have brought up the...
Your name and address, sir?
My name is Mike Tulis. I live at 3527 Burt Street. People have brought up the empty big box, and I just point out to the city council, we had Osco come into town about 10 years ago, and they built a big box store at 50th or at Hamilton Street in Northwest Radial. They were only here for a few years and cleared out, and we had Quick Trip come in and take that over, fortunately, but it was sitting there empty for a while. The decisions that are made about where CVS is going to operate, it's not an Omaha business, from my understanding. Those decisions are made somewhere else. It just comes down to dollars and cents, and there's plenty of other property that they can pick that's probably better than picking Dundee to try this experiment of moving into Omaha to see whether they're going to have a successful pharmacy business here. It's just not a good place to start. Thank you.
Thank you. Next opponent.
Good afternoon. My name is Don Schleiger, and I live at 11425 Corby Plaza. I drive down Dodge Street at least once a week, coming down to watch the happenings down here at the City Council. And just so happens that I drive through that corridor, and I've often wondered, including today, not knowing this was going on here, what could possibly be in the planning department's vision for that area. I think that the businesses there, unfortunately, and I used to live in Country Club, patronize that area and have been saddened by some of the businesses that have left there, and including the Dundee Dell, which moved from Dodge Street. And unfortunately, the theater there isn't operational. I think I saw the Sound of Music there maybe 5 times when I was a little kid, among other movies. But I think my biggest opposition is that the planning board allowing the building to be so close to the Dodge Street. My thinking is that if there's going to be growth downtown and actually through any of that area, Dodge Street's going to have to be widened and some kind of improvement there, although I think Dodge Street was pretty technologically when they went to 5 lanes and the lights. I've never seen that anywhere else in the United States except for Seattle, where the freeway, they have a situation where the traffic flows different volumes coming in, coming out. I really don't know what the answer is there. I think I'm not particularly thrilled with the radio station there with all the satellite dishes. I think people would be really offended by all of that. Those buildings there aren't as described as what they want the pharmacy to do. But I think that if somebody came up with a master plan and had the buildings conform more to Dundee, which I might remind some people, 15 years ago, Dundee wasn't as vibrant as it is now, which caused the Dundee Dell to move. But if there were some more thoughts and visions of what that whole corridor all the way down and actually past Saddle Creek, what that would look like, and some of the vision that the planning department might have, and include maintaining some of the architectural flavor of the 30s or 20s or whatever is there, but I don't think it's quite the... unfortunately, that area has deteriorated, and businesses aren't vibrantly looking to move in and out of there. And I think somebody like CBS, if they do a little bit more of what the residents want to do, I'm not sure that they would be approving of it, but I think they could do it. And if it turns into a empty box, I think the Dundee Dell might consider moving back in there. Thank you.
Thank you. Next opponent. Seeing none, Mr. Jobin, would you like a 5-minute rebuttal?
Yes, if I may, Mr. President, members of the council. I think you first have to understand the demographics here. She has 1,800 signatures of people in opposition of this particular site, but it's interesting to note that there's 5,312 people within a half mile of the site. There's 18,542 people within 1 mile of the site, and there's 28,428 people within 1.25 miles of the site. So it's hardly representative, I think, of the entire community at large. As far as the existing buildings that are out there cover about 25,000 square feet of building coverage. The CVS is only 13,225 square feet. So there's actually a reduction of building coverage on this particular site. And this is not a big box. A big box in the retail world would be, 80,000 and above, with a junior anchor site or a box being maybe 40,000 and above. So this is in no way any kind of a big box. I've said this a number of times, that there's no way to design a building with 1,800 architects. There's no way to do it. The ultimate decision-making process is with the planning department under the urban design guidelines as codified. They have the ultimate say in how this building is supposed to look. It meets all of those design guidelines, and they've worked very hard. Again, there's been, 19 reiterations of this particular site plan, elevations, et cetera, to try to work with the neighborhood and the associations. And again, I don't know that you'll ever satisfy 1,800 different architects. It just isn't going to happen. People are going to like blue shutters, pink shutters, yellow shutters, no shutters. And that's just one aspect of the building. There's multiple aspects of the building. As far as the parking area, that's to take into peak volumes. Just is what it is. As far as the access points, the site plan, the access points have all been approved by Public Works. It meets the minimum distance requirements from 49th Street. The actual distance of the Dodge Street access is 320 feet. CVS has developed, from my understanding, 7,200 stores. They know what they're doing. They know what's successful, what's not successful. They know that this location is successful. There's been talk about the Saddle Creek location. My understanding is that plan was rolled out and denied within 15 minutes of the CVS's committee on the approval of sites. It just doesn't work. There's a number of flaws and faults with that particular location. If you want to know from the gallery, it's a mid-block location. It's already had numerous failures. It just doesn't work from them from an access standpoint or a traffic standpoint. So it was denied within 15 minutes. It was just they weren't interested. As far as the trees, there was a comment that the trees, were going to be these small little trees. I can tell you that there's 48 juniper trees. They'll be 6 feet tall, 8 foot wide. There's 15 white spruce trees. These are going to be 50 feet tall and 20 feet wide. This is day one. And that's the buffer yard trees. The parking lot trees will be maples. They're going to be 50 feet tall and 40 feet wide day one. The street trees are also maples, and they'll be 75 feet tall and 40 feet wide day one. So these are pretty significant trees, and they well exceed the landscape requirements of the municipal code. There's talk about the.
Go ahead, Mr. Jobin.
There's
Maybe the Western Heritage is going to hold and put in that big tree.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? I misunderstood. But they are smaller than that when they're mature. That they're at that. Anyway, misunderstanding. The bottom line is the landscaping meets all the requirements of the. We have specific requirements on the caliper and height of the tree. It'll meet those requirements. That was apparently mature height, but that's good to know anyway. There was talk about this fight again between Walgreens and CVS. There is no fight between Walgreens and CVS or any other local pharmacy for that matter. They peacefully coexist in various markets. I was just informed by Mr. Charlton of CVS that, in fact, when Walgreens came into the Kansas City market 10 years ago, they have 40 Walgreens in the Kansas City market right now. CVS has informed me that their business has actually increased with that amount of new competition into the marketplace. So there is no fight. They do coexist. They do work together. There's no intent to take anybody out of the market or close any of the stores down. It's just fair competition. As far as what it does bring to the city of Omaha at this location, it brings employment opportunities, it brings sales tax dollars, and it brings valuation. We think that it's consistent with the master plan. We think it's a great design. We think that they've worked very hard to be compatible with the existing neighborhood. We think we worked extremely hard with the planning department, public works department, the neighborhood association. CVS wants to be a good neighbor. This is the spot that they've chosen to locate at, and we would just respectfully request favorable approval today. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Public hearing is closed. Mr. Festerson.
Thanks, Mr. President. Councilmember Jerem and I share the immediate area in our districts, and I grew up nearby, so I did attend one of the first neighborhood meetings with the developers in the neighborhood. And I will say, to their credit, I feel that the developers did try to engage the neighborhood quite early on, and that was a productive meeting, I thought, in terms of showing what was going on and trying to get input, and so I commend them for that. But as evidenced by the crowd here today, I think the neighborhood opposition is still quite apparent. Councilman Jerem and I then met with the developers after this project was through the planning board to communicate that and communicate our concern about it. And again, to the developers' credit, I think they listened and they went back to do some additional changes. But it's still apparent to me at this point that that's still not good enough either. I would say opponents had several good points today. I think the most convincing to me are our parking lot size, and I think that's what leads to some of the concerns or feelings, at least, about neighborhood encroachment with a project like this. Roof line, I think there is a project just to the west of this that would rehab a current building. It has a much different roof line that doesn't seem compatible with what this may be, in my view. And it does still feel a bit boxy. And I think maybe one of the strongest points, though, and it's something I kind of bothered me early on, is the left-hand turnoff dodge. I think it was Mr. Hale that said, you come over that hill sometimes and that sun's right in your eyes when you're heading downtown. And I've experienced that before, too, and I drive that every day. And turning left off that hill, which is that of course, the objective with a development like this, I think, is concerning to me too. And I have one question for Mr. Stubbe about, the question was brought up, was there a traffic study done? And I'd be interested in knowing why or why not.
Bob Stubbe, Public Works. I'll have Mike Pockert from our Traffic Engineering Division that's been involved in this project address that question.
Thanks.
Mike Pockert, Public Works. What was the question again, Mr. Festerson?
Was there a traffic study done on the site, and why or why not?
There was not a traffic study done. Reason being, we do have a minimum criteria for traffic studies that the development will generate 100 peak hour trips. A store of this size most likely won't generate that. Also, there is existing zoning on the site that would permit by right a certain amount of commercial to go in there. We also take that into consideration regarding the need for a traffic study.
Okay. And I can understand that, but I think that is still a concern of mine, just having it from a practical perspective and knowing what that might entail. And then lastly, I think that, we're working on, thanks, Mr. Pockert. You can sit. Lastly, I would say we're working on the Dundee Business District itself, and we just adopted the city's first neighborhood conservation enhancement district there to protect the character of that neighborhood, and that is, 5-6 blocks away. But in viewing this site, I don't think that's really at all consistent with what we're trying to achieve there. And in my mind, that's a good point as well. Mr. Jobin states that it's important that we follow the new guidelines, the new code in design. I think that's true. We need predictability for developers that come in, and so that Omaha remains pro-development. But I also think when we have a project that's requesting taxpayer subsidy to be built, like tax increment financing, we have the justification to expect more if we deem that appropriate, and I think in this case we should deem that appropriate. I don't want it to appear that I'm opposed to CVS. I'm not. In fact, I welcome them to the Omaha market. I'm pleased with the project they're proceeding with in Benson, 72nd and Maple. I think that'll be a great improvement for that area, but I feel differently about this one. So I won't be supporting it today, and I urge my colleagues to also vote no. And I'm sure there'll be further discussion, but I'd go ahead and get a motion to deny on the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Stothert?
Thank you. Just a few questions, and I do appreciate the neighbors coming here today and voicing your opinion. But I do have some questions for Rick Cunningham, Planning Director. Rick, are you back?
Rick Cunningham, City Planning.
Okay, just for a little review and for all of our benefit, this area is approved as an ACI overlay zone. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
So it's
correct.
an area of civic importance. And well, first of all, I wanted to ask you, because one of the comments said that they doubted whether this was in the true spirit, or this building, of the ACI overlay zone. Do you feel that way, the true spirit?
Yes, ma'am. It has gone through all the reviews and approval by the Planning Board as to its compliance with the ACI.
Can you just review, though, quickly, once they are approved as an ACI overlay zone, what kicks in then as far as the urban design codes, and if there is like a higher standard then that kicks in because they are the ACI overlay zone?
I'm going to ask Jed Molden to come down, and because he's an urban design specialist, to discuss the impacts of the ACI district.
Afternoon. When the ACI is...
Your name into the record.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jed Moulton, Planning Department.
Thanks.
It's an overlay. It supplements the existing zoning. It affects the roadside conditions, so it assures that sidewalks are adequately wide, that there's street trees, there's proper lighting. It also affects site design, so it adds additional landscaping to the parking lots. It assures proper sidewalk widths and approaches in the parking lot and additional elements of the parking lot on the site. It also positions the building in relationship to the street. And the intent there is that Dodge Street is seen as a transitional corridor, and over time it'll take on more of an urban feel. And part of what creates an urban design area, or urban area, is that the buildings frame the street so that there's a building. It's a traditional format. So over time we anticipate that development will come up to the street rather than parking lots. The other thing it affects is building design guidelines, sets minimums for design quality, exterior materials, transparency. There's a series of other elements. But these are minimums that are supplementing the existing zoning.
So I guess the Councilman Festerson brought up that they are going to be requesting TIF.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you said could be held at a higher standard. But I guess what I'm trying to get clear is if they are an ACI overlay zone, they are basically already held at a higher standard.
Correct. They are compliant with those basic minimums of the ACI.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Mr. Cunningham, so does this project meet all requirements of the urban design guidelines and all the elements in the master plan?
Rick Cunningham, Planning Department. Yes.
And it's consistent with the master plan?
Yes.
Okay. And I asked you before, but I asked you about the traffic. They said that there was no formal study done on traffic, but you did talk a bit about traffic to me. Can you give a little review?
Yes, we have talked about traffic with the developers ongoing, and they have made actually designed concessions based upon that. The bottom line is Dodge is a traffic corridor that has a lot of cars on it in the first place. And as Mr. Pocket indicated, this development is not going to impact it that much. It's just one store, and that's why the minimum guidelines by the Public Works Department's in there as far as requiring a traffic impact study based upon the size of the store and the trips generated. It's not any different than any other area of the city.
All right. And when we talk about urban design codes, we talk about Omaha by Design, their standards. Is the reason that these standards were developed and approved by City Council was to give the developers some sort of certainty?
I would say that the first thing that was put in place is to basically provide minimum standards and minimum contribution to the environment of the city. Secondly, then, it would be to give developers basically their game plan that they have to come in and comply with in order to meet those guidelines then as a consistently applied comprehensive plan, zoning plan, and urban design plans.
All right, thank you. Mr. Jobin, I wanted to ask you about one more question about CVS.
Yes.
You have to say your name.
Larry Jobin.
Thank you. We talked about the impact of these pharmacies coming into town, and with our hard economic times we're facing now, we certainly as a council are encouraging development to broaden our tax base and bring in jobs. And as far as each CVS, I know this is probably an estimate, but do you have any estimate about each pharmacy, how many jobs it could bring?
Yes, it's my understanding that each particular store will employ about 25 people. The annual sales are anticipated to be in excess of $10 million.
And each store property value is?
Property value, that's what we're trying to get a handle on, looking at the other Walgreens sites around town, but we were thinking it would be somewhere between $4 and $5 million. There's probably about $5 to $6 million in costs at this particular location. Whether that's reflective of the actual assessed value, we just don't know the answer to that. And then if I can talk about the TIFs aspect of it, we're not sure. I mean, we need the TIF. We want the TIF. We're not sure what benefit we're going to get at this point, so we haven't made that determination based upon the base year valuation of the existing structures out there, and then what the anticipated value is going to be on full build-out. And so we haven't made that determination yet. We're still in the process of working on that. So that'll actually follow this zoning request and plating request probably in the next month or so when we get a better handle on what it'll generate. So.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brick.
Mr. Jerem?
Yes, I'd like to thank everyone from the neighborhood who came down today. I'd also like to thank Mr. Jobin for his professional presentation, and I feel almost obliged as an attorney to say sometimes I think you take the heat, but you are representing your client and you are an advocate, and I think people should remember that that's his job to be an advocate for his client, and he does a good job at that. If you take a walk around Dundee or a bike ride, as a lot of people in Dundee do, rather than a drive. You'll notice that Dundee was obviously a place that was built by people who just didn't do the minimum. And these are minimum standards that have been emphasized today that the store in many ways complies with, as you've pointed out. But Dundee is not about the minimum as I see it. It's more than that. It's a special place with special and unique people, and Mr. Festerson and I are very fortunate to represent those people. And if you look at the design of the store, rather than go into all of the complexities of whether it fits in the arguments that the proponents make or whether it doesn't, as highlighted by the opponents, sometimes you have to revert to the simplest of terms. And I think about the show I countless hours watched as a kid, is the Sesame Street rule. The old song about one of these things just does not fit in, one of these things does not belong. And so if you take it down to the simplest terms, that whether you call this a big box store or not, the scale that it proposes by big box store terms, it's not. But in scale with what's in the existing neighborhood, it is. And so it's just so big for that area that, in my opinion, it just doesn't go. Besides articulating the reasons about the oversized parking, the left turn on Dodge, semi-trailer trucks, garbage trucks that come at all hours of the night to dump the dumpsters. There are a myriad of reasons why an overwhelming neighborhood opposition that I feel is a representative for the area lead me to support the motion to deny. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mulligan?
Thank you. I have to agree with Councilman Festerson as well as Councilman Jerem. And I think we would be creating a unsafe traffic condition there at 49th Street. I travel Dodge Street quite often myself. And I think that, or I believe that until Omaha comes up with a workable solution to the entire Dodge Street corridor, and instead of creating another very unsafe condition with you're just begging people to turn left where you shouldn't be turning left, I have to agree with the councilman as well as the neighborhood associations who have also brought this to our attention. And I to the CVS representatives, I certainly hope you understand that we welcome you to Omaha. I was just at your 144th Street and Maple location for the grand opening, but I just personally feel that this would be a situation where we could look at an alternative location for this store. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gray?
Well, Larry, Mr. Tobin wanted to say something first.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. I appreciate it. I just wanted to address one thing, because when this site was actually selected by CVS, they're looking at this site not as an AM site, but as a PM site. So they're looking at people going westbound on Dodge Street. That's where the vast majority of the turning movements are going to be. They're going to be from people that are already heading west that are going to be simply making a right-hand turn. This is a PM site selection, not an AM one. So we're not anticipating a whole lot of traffic making that turn across Dodge Street. So I just wanted to point that out to you. Thank you, Mr. Gray.
Mr. Gray, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to try to be brief here and not take too much time. I would have to, in some ways, disagree with my colleagues on the council here about it would create more danger on Dodge Street, because I don't know that Dodge Street can get any more dangerous than it already is. So I don't know that argument would carry a lot of weight with me. What does carry a lot of weight with me, though, and I think Mrs. Allgood and others, I'm not going to say that you all wasted your breath, but I think they lost me at the parking lot. The sheer size of that parking lot really disturbs me, especially as it relates to the rest of that neighborhood. I also have concerns about, and it was not addressed, about, the empty buildings around the country, and I know that there are a number of pharmacies that have started up and have since closed in a really short period of time. And I know we can't have 1,800 architects, but I probably should have been a signal that we probably should have looked somewhere else when we've got that many people in opposition to it. I am concerned about dead stores. While it's not in my district, Councilmember Festerson and I probably share the same headache with that Sonics that closed up by Baker's on 72nd Street, and because of the unique way that it was built, it's almost impossible for anything to go in there. So, I do have those concerns, but the way it fits into the neighborhood is not appropriate as far as I can see, and I'm not going to be supporting this for those reasons. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Well, it seems like I can sense how this vote's going to go, so I'll keep my statement short. I think everything has been satisfied, at least in my mind, as far as the historic concerns, the land use concerns, the traffic concerns, as well as I don't see any evidence whatsoever about the decline in property values. There has been nothing that has come across my desk to turn on a red light in regards to that. Mr. Charleston, is it?
Charlton.
Okay, would you come forward? If I mispronounced your name, I apologize. Just for the record, please, your name.
Treg Charlton.
Okay. One of the things that did pop out during the discussion was, tell me a little bit in a capsulated version about the longevity mindset of CBS.
Yeah, I'd like to address several inconsistencies or half-truths or untruths related to the drugstore wars and vacant stores and such. CBS has a long track record with now over 7,200 stores of actually being in the acquiring mode. I think if you came down to Kansas City, when we did end up acquiring the Osco chain, you might see today a few vacant Osco stores that were overlaps with some other stores we'd already constructed. As far as Walgreens or CVS stores in any of the markets in my 6-state area, I don't think I could point to one where we've closed the doors and went out of business. We're opening 250 stores a year nationally. So I'm just not sure where that information was coming from.
Thank you very much. I see no further lights, and in conclusion, I will just say thank you, sir.
Okay.
My hat is off to all those that went around and worked on petitions and got those signatures, but I'd like to remind my colleagues that there was a petition drive to save Rosenblatt Stadium that gathered 17,000 plus signatures. And guess what that property is going to be? A parking lot. No further lights. Roll call. A motion to deny, is that correct,
Motion
Mr.
to
Clerk?
not pass the ordinance. Jerem? Yes. Mulligan? Yes. Stothard? No. Or Thompson?
No.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Mr. President?
No.
It's denied on a 4-3 vote.
Next item, Mr. Clerk. We still have further business to conduct, folks.
Items 10 through 12, it's ordinance to rezone property located northeast of 144th Street and Military Road from DR and R4 to DR Development Reserve District 11 to rezone to R4 Single-Family Residential District High Density. A, Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. 12 is resolution the replat transmitted herewith entitled Woods Valley Replat 2 is hereby approved. A, Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
I'll wait till the noise gets down a little bit before we call it. If you'd be kind enough to continue your discussions outside, I appreciate it. Thank you. Public hearing on items 10 through 12 begin now. Are there any proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed. No lights, roll call.
Jerem. Mulligan. Stothard. Thompson. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
It's passed 7-0. Item 13, ordinance to amend the boundaries of the ACI 1 PL district of area of civic importance overlay district to incorporate into that district. The property is generally located from 16th to 30th Streets from Harney to Dodge and from 16th to 28th from Leavenworth to Harney. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing on item number 13 begins now. Are there any proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Roll call.
Jerem. Mulligan. Stothard. Thompson. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
Passed 7-0. Pursuant to City Council Rule 70, agenda item number 14 should be laid over 2 weeks for publication and public hearing. Liquor item number 15, Vietnamese Asian restaurant at 7212 Jones Street, new application, no location. Class I liquor license.
Public hearing on item number 15 begins now. Are there any proponents?
Good afternoon. My name is Jan Headley, 10828 Old Mill Road. I'm appearing on behalf of the Vietnamese Family Restaurant, Inc., who's the applicant. Mr. Dat Pham is here, and with his wife, Hugh Bo. They're also personally here, and we would urge you and ask you to approve the application. This application is made following the purchase of the restaurant from relatives. Mr. Pham has worked there 2 years. He's knowledgeable of the business as well as liquor license, and we'd ask you to approve the application. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Second, roll call.
Jerem. Mulligan. Stothard. Thompson. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
Passed or adopted 7-0. Item number 16, Asian Market LLC at 319, 327, 329 North 76th Street, new application, new location at the package liquor license.
Public hearing on item number 16 begins now. Are there any proponents?
Yes, Mr. President, members of the council, Jeffrey Silver, 10805 Old Mill Road. I'm appearing with Mr. Hong Zhang, who is the president of Asian Market. We'd ask your approval for this requested liquor license.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Roll call.
Jerem. Mulligan. Stothard. Thompson. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
It's approved 7-0. Item number 17, Dave's Pub, 880305 Maple Street, request permission for an addition to the present Class I liquor license in L Street Beer Garden area to the southeast. You have communications from the building inspector. If you wish to grant this, you need to grant it conditioned on their getting proper permits.
Public hearing on item number 17 begins now. Are there any proponents?
Yes, sir. My name is David Wyneu, and I own Dave's Pub on 8805 Maple Street. And I'm looking for permission to extend to the south of my building for a beer garden permit.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Second, roll call.
Jerem. Mulligan. Stothard. Thompson. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
It's approved 7-0. Item number 18, Deloria and Zoe Penzi, 5711 South 60th Street. Request permission for addition of their present Class W and Class X wholesale liquor license location.
Public hearing on item number 18 begins now. Are there any proponents?
Yes, this is Ryan Penke from DiLorenzo Penke Distributing Company. I'm the president.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Second. Roll call.
Jerem. Mulligan. Stothard. Thompson. Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
It's approved 7-0. Item number 19, Crescent Moon Ale House at 3578 Farnham Street, request permission for a special designated license for beer garden with live music on September 24th from 12 noon to 2 a.m. September 25th from 11 a.m. to 2 a.m. Music would end at midnight.
Public hearing on item number 19 begins now. Are there any proponents?
Yes, sir. Bill Baburek, President, Second Wind Incorporated.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
Yes, Mr. Burke, is
Yes.
this your annual event you do?
The Oktoberfest, yes.
And I just explain to my colleagues this is a good event, it's a well-run event, and I'd request your yes vote on this.
Just as an FYI too, we have scheduled alcohol server training for all of our servers and bartenders on September 12th. So that's a mandatory training session for all of them.
Motion approved.
Roll call.
Jerem. Mulligan. Stothard. Thompson.
Yes.
Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
The Blue Martini, 10730 Pacific Street, request permission for a special license for beer garden with a DJ on September 11th from 8 a.m. to 1 a.m. Music would end at 1 a.m.
And that is number
44. We're bringing up
44. Public hearing begins now. Are there any proponents?
Hunter Sadel, here on behalf of Sadel Enterprises Incorporated.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Mr. Jerem?
Yes, Mr. Sato, would you, we typically don't have the music go past midnight. Given your proximity to the hotel, would you be comfortable amending your application to shut the music down at midnight?
Yeah, that's not a problem. We're actually looking at putting a permit in for a permanent beer garden where we're going to kind of test the waters and see if it was worth doing.
Thank you, and I didn't mean to jump in on Mr. Thompson. I just thought maybe to keep it moving.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Second.
Thank you. We have an amendment before us.
Yes, a motion to amend the music to end at midnight.
And a second. No lights. Roll call.
Jerem. Mulligan. Stothard. Thompson.
Yes.
Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
As amended?
Roll call.
Jerem. Mulligan. Stothard. Thompson.
Yes.
Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
Consent agenda. Any member of the City Council may cause an item placed on the consent agenda to be removed. Items removed from the consent agenda shall be taken up by the City Council immediately following the consent agenda in the order in which they were removed, unless otherwise provided by City Council rules of order.
The public hearings on agenda items numbers 20 through 24 were held on August 24th. Do we have a motion?
Motion approved.
Roll call.
Jerem. Mulligan. Stothard. Thompson.
Yes.
Festerson. Gray.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
They're all passed 7-0.
The public hearings on agenda item numbers 25 through 38 begin now. Are there any proponents? 25 through 38. Are there any opponents? Public hearings closed. No lights. Roll call.
Jerem. Mulligan. Stothard. Thompson.
Yes.
Festerson. Gray.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
They're all adopted 7-0. Ordinance on final reading, item number 39, ordinance to amend Chapter 23 by creating Section 23-333 entitled Voluntary Furloughs, which authorize all city employees to take up to 3 days of furloughs in the 2011 payroll year on a voluntary basis.
Public hearings continue to today. Are there any proponents? Any opponents? Public hearings closed. Roll call.
Jerem. Mulligan. Stothard. Thompson.
Yes.
Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
It's passed 7-0. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7H, due to no meeting being held September 7th, the third reading and public hearing on agenda item 40 shall be held on September 14th. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7H, the third reading on agenda items number 41 through 43 shall be held on September 14th. The public hearing on these items are today. Item 41, ordinance declaring the necessity of acquiring property for the purpose of constructing the Big Papillion Creek Interceptor Sewer improvements.
Public hearing on item number 41 begins now. Are there any proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Next item.
Item number 42, ordinance to approve an agreement for the sale of city-owned real property to authorize the attached purchase and sale agreement with Nodo Zesto Development LLC to convey the property legally described as Lot 5, Union Pacific Place Addition.
Public hearing on item number 42 begins now. Are there any proponents?
Paul Kratz, City Attorney. Just quickly want to present this ordinance to approve the purchase and sale agreement of a small parcel of land just south of the new baseball field in north downtown. The agreement is with Nodo Zestos Development. Their plan is to build a new Zestos there to mirror what occurred down in the old Rosenblatt Stadium. We have looked at two different appraisals for the property. Obviously, we took the highest appraisal for the purchase price. That's pretty much it. We're ready to proceed with this agreement upon the council approval. Thank you.
Are there any other proponents?
Mr. President, members of the council, Jerry Slesky, 8712 West Dodge Road, for the applicant. This property for Zesto's relocation to the new ballpark area has been pending for about 9 or 10 months. We've taken the time, we think, to meet with every possible stakeholder that could be involved in a decision like this or that would affect. And that includes certainly yourselves, the Planning Department, Planning Board, Public Works, the Mayor's Office, NCAA, CWS, and all of the neighbors that surround in the north downtown area that surround the site. I'm pleased to report that the project has been received positively by everybody. There seems to be a real soft spot in the heart of the people of Omaha and the College World Series people, and particularly ESPN, who apparently have a little cart that goes over to Zesto about 4 times during the games when the games are on, and they all put their orders on and they send somebody over and they pull the cart back, and so it's a big day in the ESPN box, and if you haven't been up there, you ought to see it to believe it. And so they're excited about having Zesto at the new stadium, and we would appreciate your support. I know there's a concern, a possible concern about not bidding it. This is 10,000 square feet of land. It's $27 a square foot. It's an extraordinarily high price for a very small building. There are very few commercial uses that can make sense out of the numbers here. And I think only Zesto's volume or potential volume, certainly during serious time, and they want to stay open year-round and try to support the area, can make it work. So with that, we would appreciate your support. We have the architect, Michael Alley. We have the general manager here, and we have the developer, Terry Hogan, if you would like to ask any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Mrs. Stothert?
Mr. Kratz, could you come back up?
Paul Kratz, City Attorney.
Mr. Slesky touched on this a bit, but I just wondered if you would take a few minutes and just go over the sale of public property, just because I have been contacted by several business owners that said, wait a minute, there's laws governing the sale of public property and it should go out to bid and it should go to the high bidder. So could you explain just this process so that anyone listening, or I can explain this to the people that contacted me also?
There are two ways to sell public property, both within the ordinance and both conform to the city charter. One way is to put it up for auction, go for public bid, essentially. The second way is to sell it for its fair market value. A business decision was made to sell it the latter way, which is for fair market value. That's why I mentioned we had two different appraisals, and we took the highest appraisal in selling it for its fair market value. There's also a third way, and that's through the redevelopment process, but that's not implicated in this case. We have done this before, not often, but we did this very similar process with the Kroc Salvation Army Center a few years ago.
Okay, that explains it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson?
Mr. Kratz?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just for the record, the
the business of what the Kroc Center does is drastically different from the business of a retail store. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Go ahead.
But I'm looking at it from the city standpoint and how legally we can dispose of property, and I'm not looking at the purpose or the end result of that. My analysis is simply how can we get rid of that. Then it's for the mayor and for the council to make a decision on whether or not that's a good business decision to sell it via that method.
So what was the bottom line why we didn't send it out with an RFP?
Again, I think there was a business decision that this would be a quicker way to sell the property. We had somebody who was interested in duplicating the type of atmosphere that is occurring down in Rosenblatt. We thought that was a good use of this piece of property and a good business to go in at this particular place in this particular location.
Does it set a dangerous precedent?
I don't believe so. Again, I think each situation has to be looked at individually. And we could have made the same argument with a Kroc Center. There was a large piece of land, and we flipped it to a nonprofit entity. Perhaps we could have sold that and auctioned it off and made a lot more money. But again, those are the decisions that a government makes. What is best for the overall benefit of the city? That decision was made a few years ago. This decision was made now that for this particular atmosphere, this particular location, this would be a good use of that piece of property.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Festerson?
Thanks. I think to Mr. Kratz as well. I think it's a compelling argument to talk about the environment, and the stadium has moved, and now we want to maintain as much as that environment as we can, and certainly Zestos is an important part of that. You've answered, I think, any questions about the public process and how that works, and that satisfies me as well. I did want to ask you one other thing. I know we've received letters of support from Mecca and I think Steve Rosenblatt and some others. I wanted to ask you a question about the NCAA's actual contract for the College World Series. It's my understanding they have some, I don't know if it's approval, but certainly consultation is the idea within the contract about surrounding developments. Is that accurate to say?
No, let me clear up a couple things. We do notify them of the surrounding developments. They do not have approval over any of the surrounding developments. That is a city right and authority, and we're not going to delegate that away to anybody else.
Yeah.
But we did notify them of this. Jerry and the Zestos people did talk to the NCAA. They were favorably impressed with the project and the plan. But no, they do not have any approval rights over it.
I agree with that. The city has to maintain that
Absolutely.
ability. But there's a consultative provision in there. Is that what it says?
Just notification provision, but it becomes a consulting provision.
Okay.
They certainly can't veto whatever we decide to do.
Yeah, and it's my understanding they're supportive of this too. So.
Yes, they are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kratz, don't go away.
Trying to get out of here, Jay.
We've had two different approaches in regards to one question about the way that this was done. I believe that there's an example in my district right now that we tried one way with the old library, and that didn't work. And now we've gone to the other option and putting it up on RFP. Is that correct?
We haven't quite put it up for RFP yet. I think it's going through the surplus property stage, but it hasn't gone out yet. There is a discussion with the learning community as far as selling the property or at least leasing the property to them, and that's basically been on hold for a number of months at this point.
So the building sits vacant?
At this point, the building sits vacant. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Just wanted the council to know that there is an example out there of both ways.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I see no further lights. Next item.
Item 43, ordinance to approve redevelopment loan agreement with Capital Row LLC to limit the Capital Row LLC tax increment financing redevelopment plan for the redevelopment project site between 20th and 24th Street, Chicago, and Davenport Street to create 82 new market rate apartment units and a commercial space for new business within an urban residential village setting.
The public hearing on item number 43 begins now. Are there any proponents?
Bridget Hadley, Planning Department. If there are any questions, I can answer them.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
Labor negotiations.
Second.
City Council is going into executive session for the purpose of discussing labor negotiations and litigation. We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Jerem. Mulligan. Stothard. Thompson.
Yes.
Festerson. Gray.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes. The City Council is now going into executive session for the purpose of discussing labor negotiations and litigation.
Oh, I know. You ought to move that fan down here.
Just put right back of me. I'll be fine.
Motion
to reconvene.
Come out of executive session.
Second.
What? 4:52. We have a motion to come out of executive session. Do we have a second?
Second.
No lights, roll call.
Jerem. Mulligan. Stothard.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes. We are coming out of executive session, which we only discussed labor negotiations and litigation.
Second.
No lights, roll call.
Jerem. Mulligan. Stothard.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Festerson. Gray. Mr. President.
Yes.
4:53.
Thanks, everyone.